She didn't expect her own stepmother to tie her up in the backyard like an animal, exposed to the scorching sun. The neighbors pretended not to see, but a glance pierced through the window of the mansion next door. The millionaire, accustomed to negotiating fortunes, never imagined he'd witness such cruelty, and what he did next would forever change the fate of that young girl. Ngozi had grown up surrounded by love and stability, the only child of a caring mother and a respected father in the community. She was known as the smiling girl who lit up the school courtyard with her neatly braided hair and colorful dresses. Life was simple but filled with affection. The sound of her mother whistling a traditional tune in the kitchen was enough to fill the house with warmth. Everything changed when illness took away the most important figure of her childhood. In that void, shadows began to creep into her life, unnoticed at first, but carrying the weight of a storm yet to come. Devastated by grief, her father believed he needed to rebuild the family and soon remarried. The new wife, Mama Chica, appeared as a temporary balm. Polite in public, generous with words when her husband was around, she played the role of a loving stepmother perfectly. "Ngozi is like my own daughter," she'd say sweetly at social gatherings. For months, her father believed he'd made the right choice, but behind the walls of their home, where no one could see, small gestures revealed cracks, cold stares, sharp orders, and a subtle cruelty that only grew over time. When death claimed her father too, the mask fell completely. The girl who once ran freely in the backyard now walked under the shadow of a woman who seemed to feed on others' pain. Mama Chica turned the house into a place of silence and fear. She took away clothes, restricted Ngozi's space, and found new ways each day to remind her that no one was left to protect her. The neighbors, used to whispering about family tragedies, turned a blind eye. After all, in Lagos, stories of mistreated orphans were too common to cause a stir. But what no one knew was that this young girl was about to face one of the most humiliating punishments of her life. On a stifling morning, when the smell of sizzling oil filled the kitchen, a simple argument over food turned into a tempest. Ngozi had questioned her stepmother for serving her hardened leftovers from the day before while keeping the best portions for herself. The reaction was immediate, a violent slap, followed by a look that mixed hatred and satisfaction. Mama Chica didn't just want to correct her, she wanted to assert dominance, to show who was in charge. That's when she decided to drag Ngozi to the backyard under the merciless sun. What might have seemed like a mere domestic punishment revealed, in truth, the depths of the abyss into which the young girl's life had plunged. The ropes tightened around her wrists, burning her sensitive skin. The hot, dusty ground radiated heat to her bare feet. Mama Chica, in no hurry, tied each knot as if performing a ritual. "You'll learn to obey, you insolent girl," she shouted, her voice echoing through the neighborhood. The noise drew the attention of some neighbors who appeared discreetly at windows and doors, but no one intervened. Some murmured, "It's not our business. Family matters are delicate." Others, behind curtains, watched with morbid curiosity. The complicit silence of the neighborhood made the scene even more painful, confirming that at that moment, Ngozi was utterly alone. The sun punished without mercy, turning each minute into torture. Sweat dripped down her face, mingling with stubborn tears. Her thoughts blurred between pain and indignation. She remembered her mother and the smile that no longer existed. She remembered her father and his promise that she'd never lack protection. Now, tied up before indifferent gazes, she realized life could be cruel enough to steal not just love, but dignity. Yet deep within her, a silent, almost invisible flame refused to go out. In the heart of that girl, a question arose that would change everything. How long could she endure? Because each accumulated injustice was becoming fuel for a turnaround that no one, not even her stepmother, would dare predict. Stories like Ngozi's aren't just fiction. They reflect the pain many choose to silence. Here at African Village Story, we give voice to these lives. Subscribe now and walk with us to the end of this transformation. Damilola's mansion stood imposing, built of marble and glass, a reflection of a life marked by business triumphs and bold investments in Lagos. Behind the luxurious facade was a man used to dominating boardrooms, facing market rivals, and commanding teams with a firm voice. But on that stifling morning, nothing could prepare him for the scene unfolding before his window. The sight of a young girl tied up under the sun wasn't just unfair, it struck at the core of someone who always believed power meant protection. In that contrast, The heart of a millionaire, accustomed to the coldness of negotiations, began to beat to a different rhythm. Damilola was used to watching from his balcony as workers tended the gardens, children played in nearby alleys, or neighbors argued. But this image stood out from everything else. Ngozi's skin glistened with sweat, her wrists marked by ropes, her eyes caught between pain and resilience. It wasn't just a domestic punishment, it was public violence, almost a spectacle imposed by Mama Chica's cruelty. The scene sparked a mix of indignation and helplessness that eroded any social distance separating him from the girl. After all, money could buy high walls, but it couldn't buy the peace of witnessing such injustice without reacting. The words escaped his lips in a whisper, heavy with meaning. "My God, she's just a girl." The tone was one of shock, but also of awakening. This wasn't just about a mistreated neighbor. It was an invisible call pulling him from observer to someone about to step into something much bigger. It was as if fate had chosen that moment to place before him a decision that couldn't be postponed, because often it's not in business, but in human crossroads that a man's true character is revealed. Damilola's posture shifted as his mind sought answers. He recalled stories his grandmother told about how, in ancient times, a man's honor was measured by how he protected the weak. Those memories echoed like a drum in his chest, giving him the sense that he could no longer remain a distant spectator. With each second the girl remained under the sun, the invisible rope pulling at his conscience tightened. The millionaire, used to calculating financial risks, now weighed moral risks, and the answer always pointed in the same direction: intervene. His clenched fists betrayed an inner battle. On one hand, there was the fear of scandal. After all, a man of his stature didn't meddle in others, family dramas without rumors spreading through local papers. On the other, there was Ngozi's image silently screaming for help. Lagos was a city where elites often turned away from the pain of the less fortunate, creating a chasm between those who suffered and those who watched. But Damilola, unlike so many others, couldn't look away. Something in that scene pierced his heart like an arrow. His fixed gaze saw more than physical pain. He saw a silent, almost defiant resilience in Ngozi's eyes. Despite the tears, there was something in the way she held her chin up, refusing to fully surrender her dignity. That detail disarmed him completely, for she wasn't just a victim. She was someone who, even in suffering, still carried the flame of courage. That realization sparked an immediate respect in him. Unlike any emotion he'd ever felt for a woman, it was as if her suffering was also a mirror to his own humanity, so often hidden behind figures and contracts. As he clenched his fists, Damilola knew he was about to cross an invisible barrier. It wasn't enough to watch, to murmur indignation within luxurious walls. Something inside him demanded action. Even if the neighbors hid behind curtains, he couldn't do the same, because deep down, it wasn't just a girl being punished, it was the very idea of justice being dragged out and exposed to the sun. And the question echoing within him was clear. Was he willing to face social and personal consequences to save someone who, until then, was just a distant neighbor? This dilemma between staying safe in his mansion or crossing the fence to change a girl's fate would be the turning point of his life. Because sometimes the call to courage comes without warning, and those who stay silent in its face become complicit in evil. Damilola didn't yet know, but that moment by the window would mark the beginning of a story that would change not only Ngozi's life, but his own forever. And you, what would you do if you saw such a scene from your window? Would you stay silent like the neighbors, or would you have the courage to act like Damilola? Write in the comments what your reaction would be, because your voice can inspire many today. Damilola didn't wait another second. His heart pounded, sweat trickled down his neck, but the decision was made. He pushed the side gate open with force and crossed the yard like someone storming a battlefield. The contrast between the elegant man with firm steps and the cruel figure of Mama Chica, hands on hips and a defiant glare, made the air heavy. Neighbors watching through window slats widened their eyes, for no one in Lagos dared confront that woman without weighing the consequences. The silence that fell over the street was so dense that even the distant song of a bird seemed to stop. It was as if everyone awaited the first blow of an inevitable war. Mama Chica didn't take long to react. She let out a dry, venomous laugh and raised her chin with disdain. "It's a family matter, don't interfere, rich man," she spat, her words sharp as blades. Her tone carried a mix of irony and hatred, as if she were certain no one would dare challenge her in her own yard. She was feared, and that confidence showed in the way she crossed her arms, sure that the neighbors, complicit in their silence, wouldn't rise to defend the girl. What Mama Chica didn't know was that the man before her wasn't intimidated by false power or veiled threats. Damilola walked toward the tied-up girl, eyes unwavering. Each step echoed like a challenge, a refusal to bow to cruelty. When he reached Ngozi, he saw her wrists marked and swollen from the ropes, her skin glistening with sweat under the burning sun. For a moment, the millionaire let slip a look of such deep compassion, it seemed to carry years of pent-up pain. With a firm gesture, he knelt and began untying the knots, without asking permission. Mama Chica tried to grab his hand, but he pushed her away with a sharp movement, forcing her back 2 steps. In that moment, the certainty that she'd lost control for the first time reflected in her eyes. The ropes loosened and slid off the girl's body, falling to the ground with a dry sound that echoed like liberation. Ngozi stumbled, her legs weak from exhaustion, and Damilola steadied her by the shoulders, firm, as if vowing never to allow such a scene again. The contrast was striking. On one side, the fragility of a punished girl. On the other, the presence of a man whose stance conveyed protection and authority. To the neighbors, the moment felt like a scene from a play, an epic clash between oppressors and defenders, and no one could look away. Murmurs began in the neighboring houses, growing like waves in a stormy sea. The millionaire stormed the cruel widow's house, they whispered. He freed the girl from the ropes, others commented. In a society where appearances were everything, Damilola's act wasn't just interference, it was a scandal. The local elite, accustomed to protecting themselves through convenience, would start questioning why a powerful man exposed himself for a mistreated orphan. To many, it wasn't courage, but madness. But for those who knew Ngozi's silent pain, it was an act of humanity that transcended social etiquette. Mama Chica, wounded in her pride, couldn't hold back. She shouted with all her might, "You'll regret meddling in my house. That girl is ungrateful. She deserves nothing more than what I give her." Her words echoed, but instead of intimidation, they revealed her uncontrolled fury. Damilola, without raising his voice, responded with firmness. "What I saw here wasn't discipline, it was cruelty. And cruelty isn't a family matter, it's a matter of character." That sharp, calculated response was like a public slap, drawing gasps from onlookers. No one had ever challenged Mama Chica out loud, and now it was happening before the entire neighborhood. With steady steps, Damilola put his arm around Ngozi's back and led her toward the gate. Each movement was watched by curious eyes, some surprised, others indignant, but all unable to remain indifferent. As he crossed back into his mansion, the millionaire sealed not only the girl's momentary freedom, but also the start of a silent war against the stepmother's cruel power. With each step they took together, tension grew, as the local elite already turned the scene into gossip that would gain traction in social gatherings and market corridors. Inside Damilola's home, the atmosphere shifted. The cool air contrasted with the stifling heat of the yard, and the mansion's silence was broken only by Ngozi's labored breathing. Still frightened, she looked around, unable to believe what was happening. The millionaire offered her water, while her eyes reflected a mix of gratitude and fear. He knew that by taking her in, he was picking a fight with unpredictable consequences. The city's elite loved scandalous stories, and every gesture would be dissected like a public trial. But looking at the girl again, he knew the choice was already made. There was no turning back. In that moment, Lagos seemed split into 2 worlds. That of the vengeful stepmother, plotting her retaliation, and that of the millionaire who had turned a compassionate act into a symbol of resistance. And as happens in societies ruled by appearances and secrets, the simple act of crossing a fence had sparked a story that would change destinies forever. And you would. You risk your reputation to save someone everyone else ignores. Write in the comments, would you stay silent like the neighbors, or cross the fence like Damilola? The first weeks after taking Ngozi into his mansion were marked by silence and observation. Damilola, though busy with companies and deals, always kept a watchful eye on the signs surrounding the young girl. Small details didn't go unnoticed. The way she flinched at the mention of her stepmother, the distant look when passing. Clothing stores, the insecurity when faced with simple questions about the future. All of it convinced him there was something much bigger behind Mama Chica's cruelty. It wasn't just hatred or whim. There was a hidden secret, a reason justifying such violence. The millionaire began investigating discreetly. First, he spoke with older neighbors, masking curiosity with casual remarks. He learned that Ngozi's mother had left not only fond memories, but also valuable assets, a small rural property, family jewels, and a considerable sum in bank accounts. It was a modest estate for the elite, but enough to ensure a comfortable life for her daughter. Yet no one had ever heard of Ngozi receiving what was rightfully hers. People whispered that everything disappeared when the stepmother came into the picture. These clues began to form a darker picture than he could have imagined. Intrigued, Damilola accessed public records, something his political and business connections made easy. The shock came when he found suspicious financial transactions in the months following Ngozi's father's death. Accounts in Mama Chica's name showed deposits that didn't match the lifestyle she claimed to have, along with purchases at high-end stores and short trips to discreet resorts in Nigeria and Ghana. The dates aligned perfectly with the period when Ngozi was deprived of new clothes and decent food. This disparity revealed that the stepmother's cruelty wasn't just emotional, it had economic, self-serving roots. While investigating, Damilola heard of a man seen with Mama Chica at local parties, Kunle. With an almost theatrical charm, he was known for wooing women with promises of wealth and adventure. Behind the seductive facade were dangerous stories, shady deals, ties to smugglers, and debts chased by loan sharks. His name came up in whispers in bars and street corners, always surrounded by suspicion. If he was with the stepmother, it wasn't just for affection. There was a much larger arrangement, fueled by the money that belonged to Ngozi. Damilola began tracking Kunle's movements and noticed that his meetings with Mama Chica were frequent but always discreet. They avoided highly visible places, opting for remote restaurants, friends' houses in quiet neighborhoods, and short trips to nearby cities. This caution revealed they knew they were engaged in something illicit. Meanwhile, the orphaned girl was treated as a burden, kept in the dark about the truth that could change her fate. The cruel irony was clear. Mama Chica and Kunle's luxurious lifestyle was funded precisely by the blood and sweat of the girl left tied up under the sun. The discovery brought a dilemma for Damilola. Should he tell Ngozi everything immediately, or wait for the right moment to gather solid evidence? Revealing the truth too soon could put her in danger, as Kunle was known to react violently when threatened. But prolonged silence also meant keeping her trapped in a reality of unexplained pain. This conflict gnawed at him like a wound, for it wasn't just a legal matter, it was a moral burden. How could he look into Ngozi's eyes every day, knowing her suffering stemmed from such a calculated betrayal? In conversations with trusted allies, Damilola confirmed his suspicions. Lawyers noted that legally, the inheritance could still be recovered if the theft was proven. Private investigators assured that a single slip from Kunle could unravel the entire scheme. Meanwhile, Mama Chica continued to parade in new clothes, sparkling jewelry, and the posture of a respected widow, keeping the community blind to the reality of her life. She lived in two worlds, the cruel stepmother who punished her stepdaughter and the sophisticated woman sustained by stolen money. With each new discovery, Damilola's anger grew, not just from seeing the injustice, but because he understood the social system allowed such impunity. How many other orphaned children were living similar situations, trapped in homes meant to protect them? This reflection strengthened his resolve to act, not just for Ngozi, but for everything she represented. Exposing Mama Chica and Kunle would also mean confronting a common but rarely challenged pattern of abuse and exploitation in Lagos. However, an unseen danger was closing in. Kunle, cunning as ever, noticed someone was tracking his steps. Annoyed by the unusual activity surrounding Mama Chica, he began to suspect Damilola. Unlike the stepmother, he had no qualms about using violence as a response. This opened the door to an escalation of tensions that put everyone at risk. The millionaire knew a single misstep could turn an investigation into a tragedy, but retreating was no longer an option, because deep down, the truth could no longer be contained. Each day, the veil hiding the betrayal tore further, revealing that Ngozi's life had been stolen twice. First when she lost her parents, then when her inheritance was hijacked by those meant to ensure her well-being. What Damilola didn't yet know was that exposing this secret wouldn't just change the girl's fate. It would ignite a war against enemies willing to do anything to protect the luxury they'd built on lies. If you discovered someone had stolen an orphan's inheritance to live in luxury with a dangerous lover, what would you do? Comment below. Would you have the courage to expose the truth or stay silent out of fear of the consequences? The news that Damilola was investigating Mama Chica's finances reached Kunle's ears quickly. In Lagos, secrets traveled faster than the wind, and a man like him, accustomed to navigating both back alleys and high society halls, always had informants ready to whisper updates. Learning that a powerful figure was tracing deposits and properties made his blood boil. For Kunle, everything was a power game, and losing control meant losing the luxurious lifestyle he'd grown accustomed to. He decided to act before the investigation could advance, choosing to strike at the most vulnerable point, the young orphan herself. The first messages arrived discreetly, folded in small papers slipped under Damilola's mansion door or tucked among clothes on the clothesline. Ngozi found them odd at first, but curiosity quickly turned to dread when she read the cold, firm words, "If you keep meddling with him, you won't live to tell." The impact of those words was devastating. No matter how much Damilola protected her, fear seeped into her mind like poison. After all, who else might be watching her every move, waiting for the right moment to act on the threat? Nights became long and silent. Ngozi, used to sleeping with the city's hum, now startled at the distant sound of a motorcycle. Every creak of wood, every shadow in the garden turned into an invisible threat. The psychological strain began to erode her confidence, making her question whether even Damilola could keep her safe. For a girl who had endured years of humiliation, believing in her own security felt like an unattainable luxury. Each new note deepened her sense of vulnerability. Curiously, in Lagos, anonymous notes weren't uncommon. In political disputes and family feuds, written threats were often used to intimidate opponents. But Ngozi's case was different. She wasn't a leader or a businesswoman. She was just an orphan carrying a financial secret bigger than she could grasp. This contradiction showed how dangerous her life had become. It wasn't just about money. It was about wounded pride and Kunle's need to prove no one dared challenge his dominance. Yet, there were moments of defiance. At times, Ngozi tore the notes in front of Damilola, trying to show courage. But her trembling gaze betrayed how much the pressure crushed her. Damilola, sensing the gravity, heightened the mansion's security, hired trusted men, and began accompanying her everywhere. But he knew the greatest enemy wasn't physical, it was psychological. Once fear took root, it became an invisible prison hard to break, and with each new note, Kunle proved he knew exactly how to exploit that fragility. The climax came when a folded paper was found under Ngozi's pillow. The fact that someone had entered her room undetected sparked panic. "Not even walls will protect you," the message read. Ngozi broke down, believing she could be attacked at any moment. Damilola, consumed by rage, vowed in a firm voice, "If he dares touch you, I swear there won't be a corner in Lagos where he can hide." Those words comforted the girl, but also revealed the weight of the approaching war. It was no longer just a game of threats. It was an open declaration of confrontation. Gossip in the neighborhood grew louder. Some whispered that the girl was making up stories to stay in the millionaire's house. Others believed the threats were real, and that sooner or later, Kunle would do something terrible. This atmosphere of rumors and uncertainty left Ngozi even more isolated. In a society where an orphan's word held little weight, convincing others she was under attack was nearly impossible. This collective silence, once again, fueled her enemy's cruelty. Damilola, determined to turn the tide, began using his contacts to trace the note's origins. A trusted worker reported seeing a man lurking near the gate, leaving discreet objects. The description left no doubt. Kunle was behind it all. This gave Damilola the clarity to act, but also confirmed that the enemy wouldn't back down easily. If he dared invade a girl's room, what would he do when finally cornered? Every detail heightened the pressure. The city's heat felt more suffocating, days dragged on, nights were endless. For Ngozi, simply opening a window became fraught with fear. For Damilola, every business meeting was interrupted by the thought that the girl was in danger. It was like walking a tightrope, where one wrong step could cost her life, and deep down, both knew reacting wasn't enough. Soon, they'd have to face Kunle directly. The tension reached its peak. The latest note, written in larger, angrier letters, left no room for doubt. Next time won't just be a warning. It was the harbinger of a silent war about to erupt into something far more dangerous. And as in any story where power and greed intertwine, the line between survival and tragedy grew ever thinner. If you were in Ngozi's place, receiving threatening notes in your own home, what would you do? Would you flee to protect yourself or confront whoever's behind the threats? Write in the comments your choice. The courtroom was packed that stifling Lagos morning. Men in sharp suits, women in colorful traditional attire, and curious onlookers crowded the wooden benches, eager to witness a case already spreading through local papers. The story of the abused orphan had become a public spectacle, and everyone wanted to see if justice would dare confront a widow known for her sharp tongue and influential connections. The tension in the air was almost tangible, as if every glance anticipated a divisive outcome. Mama Chica entered the courtroom with firm steps, dressed in dark clothing that projected respectability. Feigning fragility, she carried an embroidered handkerchief, dabbing at forced tears whenever someone approached. To part of the audience, she seemed the victim, a woman unjustly accused by a meddling millionaire who, according to malicious rumors, was only trying to get close to a defenseless stepdaughter. Her performance was flawless, and for a moment it seemed the court might lean in her favor. But the judge's gavel signaled the true start of the battle. Mama Chica's lawyers presented a folder stuffed with papers they claimed were irrefutable proof that Ngozi had stolen money from her stepmother. Forged bank records, fake receipts, and copied signatures were displayed before the court's attentive eyes. She always played the victim. Here's the proof. Mama, Chica declared loudly, theatrically, holding up the papers like trophies. A murmur rippled through the room. Some spectators muttered disapproval toward the girl, while others sat in stunned silence, incredulous at such accusations. Ngozi, seated beside Damilola, could barely breathe. Her trembling fingers and tear-filled eyes revealed the weight of the injustice. For a girl who'd always lived on the margins, being accused of theft in a courtroom felt like reliving years of humiliation. Her face showed despair, but also a glimmer of hope, because beside her, Damilola remained unshaken. He knew this was the moment to turn the tide, and he wouldn't let the deception prevail. With a calculated gesture, the millionaire handed his lawyer a different folder. When opened before the judge, it revealed not only original documents but also certified copies, exposing the blatant errors in the forgeries. Ngozi's signatures didn't match. The stamps bore non-existent dates, and even the paper carried marks of tampering. A forensic expert called by the defense confirmed to all, "These documents are not legitimate. They were recently fabricated to incriminate the girl." The silence that followed was broken by a collective gasp of surprise. Mama Chica tried to protest, but her voice lacked its former strength. The judge eyed her sternly, and part of the audience, previously sympathetic, began exchanging shocked glances. "So, it was all a lie?" murmured one spectator. Others, outraged, stood up, shaking their heads in disapproval. The atmosphere shifted quickly, and the woman who moments before posed as a victim was now seen as a manipulator. The scene showed how, in Lagos, public opinion could turn in seconds, needing only a slip to destroy a carefully crafted reputation. Damilola kept his gaze fixed on Mama Chica, as if silently declaring that truth always finds a way to surface. Proving the forgery wasn't just a legal victory, it was a blow against years of silent abuse. For Ngozi, hearing the expert confirm the documents were fake was like breathing again after being suffocated. Tears still welled in her eyes, but now from relief. The feeling that the world, even if just for a moment, was willing to hear her brought back a spark long extinguished. The courtroom crowd was divided. Some shouted in anger, outraged by the stepmother's cruelty. Others sat in shock, unable to believe a woman so known in their community could forge evidence. This division highlighted the complexity of social dynamics. Many preferred to uphold the facade of appearances rather than admit violence was real in seemingly respectable homes. Yet, the courage to expose the lie paved the way for other silenced stories to gain a voice. The judge, observing the commotion, banged the gavel again, demanding silence. "If you continue with forgeries and theatrics, this court will not hesitate to impose due punishment." Those words echoed as a harbinger of what was to come. The case was far from over, but that morning's scene had already left its mark on everyone present. Ngozi was no longer just the girl punished by her stepmother. She was now a symbol of resistance against manipulation, someone who, with unexpected support, defied the cruel logic of those who believed themselves above the law. As they left the courtroom amid curious stares and whispers, Damilola knew the war was only beginning. Mama Chica and Kunle wouldn't accept defeat quietly and would do anything to regain control. The revelation of the forgery was just the first act of a story that would have more dangerous and unpredictable chapters. And you, do you believe justice would prevail in this case? If you were in the courtroom, whose side would you take? The widow claiming to be a victim, or the girl fighting to prove her innocence? Share your opinion in the comments. The night fell heavily over Lagos, bringing a rain that seemed to wash the streets and hide secrets in the shadows. Puddles reflected the dim streetlights, and the sound of raindrops on rooftops drowned out other noises. It was the perfect setting for a desperate act. Kunle, humiliated after the courtroom defeat, decided the only way to regain control was to strike at the heart of the matter, the young orphan who, to him, had become a symbol of his downfall. With that thought, he planned a kidnapping, hoping to silence the voice threatening his life of luxury and lies. Ngozi was caught off guard while fetching water in the mansion's yard. A strong arm grabbed her, and before she could scream, a damp cloth covered her mouth. Darkness and a stifling smell overwhelmed her senses, and everything faded for a moment. When she regained consciousness, she was inside an old abandoned house on the city's outskirts. The place had peeling walls, broken windows, and a musty smell that clung to the skin. A faint bulb hanging from the ceiling lit only part of the room, leaving shadows that seemed to watch her every move. Kunle emerged from the darkness, a cruel smile on his lips. "You thought you could bring me down? You thought a nosy millionaire and some papers would change who's in charge here?" He mocked, stepping closer. Ngozi, though terrified, took a deep breath and found the strength to reply, "You'll never silence me. One day the truth will win." Her words echoed in the empty space, an unexpected challenge. The firmness in her voice, despite her fear, infuriated Kunle further. He hadn't expected resistance. He expected submission. Meanwhile, Damilola had noticed her absence. Finding the fallen bucket in the yard and subtle signs of a struggle in the wet ground confirmed the kidnapping. Without wasting time, he mobilized his network. Businessmen, police, childhood friends who knew every corner of Lagos. He knew that in a city where time was the enemy, every minute counted. The first clues came from a taxi driver who saw a man dragging a girl into an unmarked car. It was little, but enough to spark a race against time. Inside the abandoned house, tension mounted. Kunle paced in circles, boasting about how everyone feared him, how the entire city knew his influence. But with every word, Ngozi watched him closely, as if memorizing details she could later use against him. It was remarkable how even in terror, a spark of courage shone in her eyes. Perhaps it was the reflection of all she'd endured, her mother's loss, her stepmother's tyranny, the cruel punishments. None of it had destroyed her, and now facing an armed kidnapper, she stood firm though her voice trembled. Outside, the rain eased, but Damilola's search intensified. Phones rang, police radios buzzed, and cars sped through rain-soaked streets. Lagos, with its maze of alleys and forgotten areas, offered countless hiding spots, but the millionaire knew Kunle wouldn't resist using a symbolic location, something that represented dominance. Investigators cross-referenced information and learned Kunle often met accomplices in abandoned houses on the city's outskirts. This small detail opened a path that could lead to the night's resolution. The clock ticked, each second like a hammer striking the hearts of those following the search. Inside the hideout, Ngozi sensed Kunle's growing anxiety. He muttered to himself at times, as if trying to convince himself he was still in control. Despite her fear, the girl began to see his anger as a sign of weakness. "You're scared, Kunle, because you know the truth has already left your mouth and no one will protect you anymore," she risked saying, staring at him. The silence that followed was broken only by the rain, and for a moment it seemed something in him wavered. But the danger was still real. Kunle approached her violently, grabbing her arm as if to erase the courage he saw in her eyes. Outside, Damilola and the police were closing in, guided by converging information. That rainy night, Lagos seemed to hold its breath, awaiting the inevitable clash between courage and cruelty, truth and lies, justice and vengeance. If you were in Ngozi's place, would you have the courage to confront the kidnapper and defy his threats, or stay silent to survive? Write in the comments, what would be your choice in this situation? The rain was still light when Damilola and the police surrounded the old abandoned house. The place looked like it came from a nightmare. Broken windows, blackened walls, and a silence broken only by the wind whistling through the cracks. Each step toward the door carried the weight of hours of searching, but also the hope of finding Ngozi alive. His heart raced faster than the sound of boots in the mud, for in that moment, he wasn't just a millionaire in action, he was a man risking everything for someone who'd become essential to him. Inside, Kunle paced in circles, his eyes wild. Ngozi sat in a corner, tied up again, but her gaze steady. There was exhaustion, fear, but also a spark of resilience that refused to fade. It was in this scene that Damilola burst in, shoving the door open with force, flanked by two armed officers. The confrontation was inevitable. Kunle, seeing him, laughed with disdain. "You think you can buy everything, don't you, millionaire? But in here, no money can buy your victory." His words, laced with hatred, revealed not just arrogance but desperation. The tension exploded when Damilola stepped forward, demanding the girl's immediate release. Kunle, in a mix of rage and wounded pride, let out a bitter laugh. "She doesn't even know how much she's worth. You have no idea what you're fighting for. This girl's inheritance was enough to change anyone's life," he shouted, letting slip what had been hidden for months. The silence that followed was heavy, as if the walls themselves paused to listen. The confession wasn't just an outburst. It was the key that explained the entire web of cruelty and manipulation. The most shocking moment came when he continued. "Mama Chica used me, as her accomplice from the start. She stole everything, put me in charge of watching and keeping the girl under control. I only did what I had to so I wouldn't lose my share." Those words cut like blades, revealing that the stepmother was never alone in her cruelty. Kunle wasn't just a lover, but a strategic partner in a scheme that turned an orphan's life into a prison. It was the revelation that tied all the loose ends, the punishments, the financial theft, the threats. Ngozi, even through tears, lifted her chin upon hearing this. For the first time, the truth was spoken aloud, no longer hidden in documents or suspicions. Her face showed pain, but also relief, as if she finally held proof that it wasn't madness or imagination. It was a conspiracy. Damilola seized the moment. "You've condemned yourself, Kunle. The world now knows who you really are, and there won't be a shadow in this city deep enough to hide your lies." His words, firm and authoritative, made it clear the confrontation wasn't just physical but moral. The clash intensified when Kunle, cornered, tried to resist. But the police, already on alert, moved with precision. The struggle was quick, noisy, but ended with him handcuffed on the floor, panting, still shouting that no one would believe. What he didn't realize was that his confession, witnessed by more than one person, could no longer be erased. The secret kept for so long was now exposed, ready to turn against him and Mama Chica. With every word that echoed, the young orphan's fate changed irreversibly. Damilola knelt beside Ngozi, untying the ropes that bound her. The silent embrace that followed said more than any words could. It wasn't just gratitude, it was recognition. Two different worlds meeting at a common point, united by the pursuit of truth and the courage to face real monsters. Ngozi, with a trembling voice, murmured, "I knew one day it would all come to light." It was as if, in that moment, the weight of years had been lifted from her shoulders. But the battle was far from over. Kunle's revelation was just the start of a larger judicial and social war, as Mama Chica would now face not only accusations, but concrete evidence. In a city where the power of appearances still dictated so many rules, the next chapter promised to divide opinions and alliances even further. What happened next would define not only Ngozi's fate, but the future of all who dared to join her fight. If you were in Ngozi's place, would you hear the confession with tears of pain or relief at finally seeing the truth exposed? Write in the comments, what would you feel discovering that all the cruelty was, in fact, a calculated plan from the start? The courtroom that day became the stage for a twist few could have imagined. The room, filled with murmuring voices, fell silent when the judge banged the gavel and delivered the final verdict. Kunle would remain in custody for kidnapping, extortion, and criminal association. Mama Chica, unmasked, was ordered to return every penny of the stolen inheritance. The ruling thundered through the corridors, reaching even those waiting outside. Suddenly, the woman once feared and flattered was reduced to a pale face, eyes lowered, shoulders slumped under the weight of shame. Every whisper in the crowd sounded like a stone thrown at a reputation in ruins. The most repeated comment echoed through the audience. "Who would have thought the mistreated girl is the rightful heir?" The phrase spread like wildfire, crossing markets, gossip circles, and local newspapers. It wasn't just an orphan's victory over a cruel stepmother. It was a symbol that even the weakest could rise against a system of appearances and injustice. Relatives who once sat at Mama Chica's table seeking favors now rejected her without mercy. The same surname that once served as a social shield became a source of repulsion. Nothing weighs heavier than the scorn of former allies when the mask falls. Ngozi, for her part, felt as if she were breathing for the first time after years underwater. Walking out of the courtroom, surrounded by gazes that now recognized her as the rightful heir, was transformative. Yet, there was no desire for vengeance in her heart. Her suffering had shaped her differently. She knew the recovered money could easily be spent on luxuries, but she chose a different path. Instead of repeating the cycle of selfishness that had wounded her, she decided to use the inheritance to build something greater, an orphanage and scholarships for children and youths who, like her, had known the pain of abandonment. This choice not only redeemed her past, but planted seeds for the future. The announcement moved the city. Many remarked, "This girl could live like a queen but chose to live as a guardian." The orphanage, built in a working-class neighborhood, was named after her late mother, a tribute to the love that never faded from her memories. The scholarships were given to young people dreaming of becoming doctors, engineers, artists. It was as if every stolen penny had been purified by pain and transformed into hope, a clear example of how courageous choices can change destinies far beyond one's own. Damilola followed each step of this process with a mix of pride and emotion. Used to seeing businessmen profit from others' weaknesses, he was astonished to witness a young woman who, despite her wounds, chose generosity as her response. In an intimate conversation, away from the city's prying eyes, he opened his heart. "Ngozi, I didn't just fight for justice. I fought because you taught me what courage is." The confession, spoken softly, almost a whisper, carried the weight of someone recognizing they'd found in another what they'd always sought. Her response came as a shy smile, full of meaning. Ngozi, accustomed to the silences of pain, was now learning the silences of love. By accepting Damilola's outstretched hand, she wasn't just accepting a romantic gesture, but a pact of rebuilding. It was as if they said to each other without words, "We survived the worst, now we'll build the best." This meeting of souls marked the birth of a different kind of romance, born from pain, but transformed into hope. The city watched from afar, with curiosity and admiration. Lagos, so full of stories of betrayal and downfall, now gained a rare tale of justice and renewal. Though challenges remained, envious glances, malicious gossip, social resistance, nothing seemed strong enough to extinguish the flame born between them. Because when suffering is transformed into love and justice, even scars become medals. And so, the story that began with ropes tightening a humiliated girl's wrists ended with hands clasped in promise of a future, a dignified future, marked by courage, generosity, and the vow that no suffering would be in vain. The audience following closely didn't just witness a happy ending, but a silent invitation to reflect on how many other Ngozis still existed, waiting for someone to cross the fence in their defense. From humiliated girl to rightful heir, Ngozi turned pain into hope and found in Damilola's love the strength to start anew. But this is just one of the stories our village holds. New emotions are coming, so click the video below and dive into another journey that will touch your heart. See you there.